I'll just start by asking about how you first kind of encountered Michael Glatze and his story.
It came from an article in the New York Times magazine called My Ex-Gay Friend that Benoit Denizet-Lewis wrote. And just thought it would make, it was the kind of thing that you read and feel like I felt so angry with this person who, you know, went completely against everything he had fought for, and I kind of wanted to know why. And just kind of felt like a lot of films that I like to watch and that I respect have to do with kind of characters that might be at times unlikable, but we kind of try to understand why they did what they did. And that was our sort of goal.
I mean, when you were kind of taking on the project, how much were you kind of thinking about this kind of balance and where your point of view would come in? Because I think the film does feel quite impartial to a certain extent. Were you very conscious not to kind of go too much one way or the other?
Yeah, that's between Gus Van Sant, the executive producer, and James and myself. The goal was always to try and find a way to, you know, try and understand this character without vilifying him. But it was hard, of course. It's kind of a weird, it's become kind of strange to talk about because it's you know, like you watch a finished film and almost assume that that's exactly what you had intended from day one. But the script went through multiple drafts, and I kind of went in and out of how to be fair to his story and balanced in terms of you know, not ending on a note that shows that he's either right or wrong, but while maintaining some sense of a point of view, because you know I'm not so naive to think that if a Christian pastor made the film, it would not look like this. So it's like, it's always been a really tricky thing to do. But yeah, the goal was always to just try to tell his story without vilifying him, and I feel like that starts more of a conversation, a more interesting conversation than a film that tries to shove something down your throat.
I mean, did Michael himself have any kind of involvement? Did you meet with him when researching the film or when the film was being shot?
Yeah, people are pretty surprised to find out that he sold his life rights for us to make the movie. To a bunch of gay people. No, the first step, we started this about 3 years ago, and the first step for me in terms of writing was meeting the real Michael Glatze, and I went to the Bible school that we portray, which is in the middle of nowhere, eastern Wyoming, and I went there. He was in his final year and had recently met Rebecca, and went to interview him, and that experience kind of changed everything, because up until that point what I had read was pretty hateful, and so again it was like, well, how to tell this story without making him this hateful person when it seemed like he was. But to meet him in person, and I just completely saw the other side. I felt like he's very intelligent, very like genuinely sympathetic, charismatic. Like I wanted to kind of be his friend, and I just realized, like, you know, we can all say things that are taken out of context or kind of like put into this particular box or section of a magazine or a newspaper or whatever. And I saw this whole other side to him that was really helpful in kind of trying to get to understand him.
I mean, obviously he sold his life rights, so he was expecting to see his story on screen, but how did he feel that that story was going to be put on screen by a gay man?
Well, because when you sell your rights, you have zero say or control in anything. It's like you give everything up, so no script, no, you know, he didn't see anything until the final product. And you know, he knew about Gus's involvement, and he knew about James's involvement. And Gus is an out gay filmmaker. James is like practically gay. But you know, I don't think a lot of people have told this story that much. But no, when I went to Wyoming, I think he was expecting some kind of like Hollywood director because of the names involved. And I've been working in film for like close to 15 years as an assistant, as an editor, made short films. So been like working towards this for a while, but I think he expected someone else. So when I showed up, he definitely was, he had this look like, oh, okay. And I was like, hey girl, what's up? So he was a bit taken aback, but once we got to talking, it was a weird thing where at the end of, there was a dinner and then a breakfast the next morning. I was in a hotel though. That sounded weird. That sounded wrong. But during 2 separate meals where at the where at the end he literally gave me his blessing, and it was kind of humbling, and it was like a really good experience for me because he was so dogmatic and so like every question I had he would answer with a Bible verse, and it made him feel like so just like not human. And after a kind of like breaking through that and getting to know the real person and telling him exactly what I wanted to do with the story, which is what I did, he gave me his blessing. And then when he saw the film, I assumed he was not going to like a lot of it, and he ended up loving it.
So did you speak to him after was it the Sundance?
He came to
screening?
Sundance, yeah.
And what was
with his wife?
what did he say to you after he saw it? What was his reaction?
You know, the amazing thing is that he saw the whole kind of like the development of the film, and then having watched it as just an immense healing process, and he realized how wrong he had been. So you know, he's still married to Rebecca, considers himself straight. He's a pastor at that same church, but he's no longer anti-gay. He saw this whole thing and just felt like he just went off his rocker a bit too much. But I expected at least something like a comment on the final shot that to me feels like he's still thinking, and he really he had nothing to say. He loved the film and loved how it was done, and told me that he understands that it's a character based on him, so maybe some pieces of dialogue or some storylines aren't exactly as they happen, but yeah, I was pretty shocked, and I didn't know if I should be shocked or happy that he loved it, to be honest. It was kind of weird. Like, it's a good thing, right? I don't know.
You briefly mentioned James Franco a minute ago, and he's really kind of developing a reputation as the kind of go-to Hollywood actor for playing gay roles on screen. Can you talk a little bit about working with him and what that was like?
Well, I was lucky in that he was a producer on this. He's the one who optioned the article and the life rights himself to play this role. So I came in after. But lucky in that it meant that he was dedicated from day one in terms of developing it and like making sure it was done the right way. And so we just got along really well, and it kind of meant that when it came to like, you know, being on set and acting and working with me, that he gave it his all, which I think shows, or I hope shows. But no, it was a great experience, and it was, you know, intimidating at first because it's my first feature, and it takes so long to get a film put together, and then when you're on set, it starts to almost like feel like a little bit normal, and then every now and then I would look in the monitor and be like, that's James Franco. Like, this is so weird.
And obviously you have Zachary Quinto and Emma Roberts. I mean,
yeah,
it must
really
have been a
cast.
dream to work with these people.
Yeah, it was a complete dream come true. But no, James was great, and yeah, I think he's, you know, at times people can kind of give him shit for playing so many gay roles. He's always like co-opting gay culture. But I have a lot of respect for him because I think that for someone in his position and you know, his level of celebrity and his power to be putting out this message that you should play a part based on story and character and not who they choose to sleep with, I think that's far more progressive than what, you know, a lot of people are doing.
Absolutely. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about Gus Van Sant's involvement in the film. You mentioned that he was on board from the beginning. I mean, how was it? You'd worked with him in the past, I believe.
Well, sort of. I was a assistant on Milk. It was kind of like a very random, random job that I had. I was assisting the editor, and so he had seen some of my short films and read a different script that I wrote that had kind of similar themes in terms of queer identity and people kind of trying to become something or someone else. And so it was Gus who initially read the article, actually. So the whole thing stemmed from him. So he read it and sent it to me and James and pieced the whole thing together.